All right. Yeah. So the shaila is like this. The Vav. Let's summarize. I'm not reading the text again inside, but just summarize the question, which this is the pshat. So what is he saying? He's saying that kol zeh, everything we said above, namely, which is the one point of the Maimer, that which means that notwithstanding the nature of Oir itself per se, it fundamentally has a tchila, has a beginning, and at best it's Ein Sof. That's the classic Ein Sof. Notwithstanding that, the Metzius is not that way. The fact is, because Oir is Me'ein HaMo'er. Now, the shaila that needs to be understood here is this Misat B'chira Sa'atzmos, or this is after the B'chira, that's the natural rule, because Oir Me'ein HaMo'er is a natural rule. It's both, because the Moed is the Eibishter, and the Eibishter has chosen to reveal himself. So in his revelation, there's the B'chidas Atzmos, the choice to reveal himself. So in his revelation, he has chosen to reveal the truth of his being, which is Ein Le'Tchila, not just without end. Actually, there's three things. There's three matzovim. As the Frierdiker Rebbe says, there is a beginning that produces endless finite things. So one demises, but then another one, they don't last. They're inherently limited beginning and end. But the source keeps on producing. Like numbers of beginning and end. That's one level. Then there's a level of Ein Sof, where there's a beginning, but the end endures, it produces Kayamim La'ad, Nitzchi. But having a beginning, like he says, Sichlin Nivdolim, we don't speak of that either. Well, that, it would sound a little bit from the Frierdiker's mind, but that he's speaking of that kind of Ein Sof. Not just Ein Sof in Mispar, but itself Ein Sof, that could be touched Ein Sof as beginning, but no end. But the Rebbe is revealing here, it's not so obvious in the Frierdiker Rebbe's mind, that no, a third level, an Atzmistic level, and that is that in all of his expressions and creation, the true Ein Sof Amiti is, which is that Ein Le'Tchila. And as we pointed out, that is corruptedly, but manifestedly expressed in Nivroim that don't feel they have a Tchila. That's because they are direct consequence of the oir, which is rooted or reflective of the moed, the taka is ein le'tchila, as we spoke about yesterday in the previous shiur. Not so clear, again, is the giluyim, not creations. What does it mean that ein le'tchila in the Sfiris ein ketz, lifnei hatzimtzum? Of course there's a tchila, it's the Eibishter. Okay, there's possible explanations that are given there. One simply is that the Ein Le'Tchilanus there means, what are these Sfiris and Olam is Ein Sof? They're expressions of him. Each one, this is the Nekuda, each one, notwithstanding that it's a particular Sfir, it's Ein Sof, Sfiris, but each one is one Sfir. Each one expresses this. The Ein Le'Kadman Eibishter is expressing himself this way. Ein Le'Kadman, or he is a kadmon, sorry, Ein Le'Tchila, the Ein Le'Sof. Each Svir is expressing that. Despite itself, as he says clearly in the Maimeh, the Urke Shel Atzma Yesh Le'Tchila, but rooted in the Mo'er, it expresses the truth of the Mo'er. So that's how it is Lifnei Hatzimtzum. The Maimeh takes great pains to point out, pains for us, and it's for the Rebbe also, is the Mamshich the Inyonim. The Maimeh is very, it's foolish of us to venture any words to describe this, but we see physically it was very hard work that we saw. To point out that this Ein Sofness of even Ein Le'Tchila is in all of the levels, even as the Sfiras Datzilus, and certainly in creation itself. hard to see an Eser Svira d'Atzilus, but he makes that statement. The fact that it is, even though it's Eser, v'loy Teisha, v'loy Achadasar. An important point in the Maimon, as he says, this is a profound nuance that tzarich even further, but it's clearly critical, that the Eser Sviras are, in essence, the Sviras Ein Sof, but just 10 of them. It's not something else. It's not something else, which is why he asked the question, how do you get from Bligvul Sviras to Eser Sviras? The question is not how do you get from Bligvul to Gvul. Tzimtzum, it's a radical Tzimtzum, Bligvul to Gvul. But how do you get from Ein Sof Sviras to 10 Sviras? It's the same substance. How does that Bligvul, which is what he's saying is that the Bligvulness remains kind of Bligvul, but manifested in 10. That's why it's still called the 10 Sviras. Same lashon, the same language you use for Lifnei Tzimtzum in Eser Sviras Bliketz, Sviras Adin Ketz, Sviras Bliketz, and so on. It's the Sviras now 10, implying it's 10 Take, but these 10 also convey the Bligvulness of the Eibishter. Now what the 10 Sviras are saying, Lifnei Tzimtzum, you choose to manifest your true being in endless Sviras. Now you've chose to manifest it in 10. But this property of you is still present. In Biyah, it's no longer you. Biyah, it's now us. But where do you see him and us? In the Marobum, Agodla Masecha. And that's not just in the classic sense, he created it once, and first of all, it's endless numbers. He first says there isn't, but in the end, there is endless numbers. Why is there endless numbers, even in Oretz? Because it keeps on producing endlessly, and that's not a koyach insist, that's bepeil in the nivra. Every nivra in its creative power is a blig vulnus. And certainly in Tzvar Shamayim that remain undiminished from the moment they were created, that plus the sense of I have no beginning, there you see the combination of these two things. Their endurance and reproductivity without weakening endlessly, and the herigish that's the Ein Sof. Where's the Ein Leitchila? I am. That seems to be the summary of what he said till Eizvav. One thing is certain, I mean, I just didn't have time, but I know the Maimon is creating a lot of discussion on Mashpiyim and wherever it's being taught. Obviously. I wish I could listen to everybody's explanations, but Akol Panim. So now he says that all this is Mukhrech. Also, what is Mukhrech? That the Yid is Mamshech and connects the Eibishter himself, not just levels of Giluyim and Oir, but the Eibishter himself, again, the Ein Litchilav, Ein Lisof, in Aveda, in this world. Now, how's it Mochach? So let's visit this again. So he asked a Shaila on the teaching of the Maggid. What did the Maggid say? The Shaila is like this. The Maggid says, explaining the Gemara that greater is the work of tzaddikim, meaning Eden, Aveda, then Meister Shemayim v'Oretz. So the Gemara says, because one hand, two hands, he explains the deeper meaning of that creation is to go from what? From nothing to something. That's a big chiddush. But a bigger chiddush is, once there is a something, to revert it to nothing, to make the yesh ayin. That's a big chiddush. So, fine, beautiful. What's the Rebbe Shaila? The Rebbe Shaila, it seems, is this, and he was gets confusing is because the word ayin doesn't mean the same thing in these two. It's a different ayin. It's a different ayin. Namely, the Shaila is, what can we do? We can only get to our source. And Nivra cannot go beyond its source. Now, in creation, there are all kinds of sources. We're talking the ultimate source, but first of all, there's Ishtalshalos. With the 6 midas, the Eibishter created, B'shei, doesn't say, right, you also this by mitzvah maimon, doesn't say Shesham Asa Hashem Shemayim, but B'Sheshes, the Zohar says that each day, as you can actually see, Yom Rishon is Chesed, Yom Sheni is Gvur, and so on. That's the immediate source. So the question therefore is that tzaddikim to their avodah take the yesh and make it ayin. That is ishtalshalus. What's one step up ishtalshalus? Kachasheicha ka'ira. Light and dark are the same. Im tzedakta matitin loy. Avodah doesn't affect there because it's infinite. Bligvul, Haman, and Mordechai are the same. So not reaching beyond what's the ayin that they can connect it to. The ruchni is still called ayin because it's ruchni and it's not our world at all, and not tangible. It's called ayin for us. But what are we connecting to? Avodah, to that level, which is our immediate source. And again, you cannot go beyond your source. That ayin from the main atom, right? The water can only rise as high as the source of water that starts it. That's how high it will rise, and not high 32 amos. Is the height, therefore, of the mikveh in the Beis Hamikdash. So what's the shaila? We just learned now that the Eibishter, his creation comes from where? What's invested in, it's like this kasha is based on the Rebbe's beer in the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimed. Now comes the question. So now we're saying that creation is what? This whole adichas is that the oil, which is from Alter Rebbe, Geras HaKodesh, the whole beard, it all comes down to one thing, that the oil that creates is mein amoir. It's yusim atzmusa. That's where creation comes from. That can be accessed through Avedis Tzadikim. How's it possible? We should only be able to. It's there. Obviously, it's present, but to access. A conscious to reach magia. What can we reach? We can reach those levels of alikus that are within our reach, and that is the source, the immediate overt source. But the shaila is now we're learning that what's really invested in all of it, peeling back a layer, that is what is. So what does it mean that it's an impossible statement that greater is the Ma'aseh Tzadikim avodah than creation? What can more than creation? As we're explaining it now. Now let's start the answer. I'm open to explanation here. But that, it seems, is the shaila. Yeah, page. I have different structure completely. And what page is in your contrast? What?
The last word on your test. The last word on your test.
Last word on your test. Okay. So the answer, even though, as we said in the brackets before, that the place which is higher than Avodas Adam is what is Ba'ifah Kachasheicha Ka'ira, all is equal, bligvul, dark and light are the same. Im tzedakta, if you did tzedakah, what have you done? And if you sinned exceedingly, you've done, what have you done to him? Answer to all of that is nothing. So listen carefully. So mitzad, the system, it's at logic, and nivra lamata is no shaykhs to bligvul, no shaykhs to this level of kashecha ka'ira. True, it's not true. And the nivra should only be able, by the nature of things, by the nature of nature. And nivra should only be able to reach to the level that directly responsible for his being, and that's Ishtaushalo, the 6 midas. There is a higher and deeper thing. Then what? then the madrega of bligvul kachashecha ka'ira. Kachashecha ka'ira is classic bligvul, the classic Ein Sof. But here we're saying, this is all mucher. He started saying kol zeh mucher, what we said before. Once the inyan Amakyos, in summary, it's the Eibush himself who chooses. He wants Ma'aseh Tzaddik. Yesh inyan of Amakyos, shnikol upon pnimis hamakiv, not stam makiv, but pnimis hamakiv. That's not enough. V'yad la'atzmos hamohos, the Eibush himself. So therefore, even mitzad the nature of nature, which God deliberately makes, because He wants us to appreciate that our value is because He's chosen to invest Himself in us. Notwithstanding that we are finite creatures in a guf and elam hazeh, and have no shaykhs to transcendence. That's true. And notwithstanding no shaykhs to transcendence, we have a shaykhs to Him. Why? Because there He chose that He wants, even though the Medrash says it very clearly, He doesn't know at the beginning of creation. He created light, created darkness. They said, I don't know which one. They're both equally insignificant. But then, mitzad bligvul, mitzad is manifested, classic Ein Sof. But then the Oyer is Megala, the Moyer, Lamata, and the Moyer says, Taka, all insignificant, but I want you. Ma'aseh Tzaddik. V'nimnech, Mishma Shem Sat Tzaddikim, and then the Medrash says he consulted with the Tzaddikim. In other words, they are the whole raison d'etre of creation. U'kamisha Kosav, as the Pasuk says, the Pasuk starts off saying, Alei Ach Esav LeYaakov, pointing out to the equality. But the pasuk concludes, and I've chosen to love Yaakov, and Esav I love, and Esav I reject. There is the level of bchira. This is bchira sa'atmas higher than all giluyim. As he goes on to say, every level of giluy of oir has already a netiyah. If you're saying revelation, as soon as you say the word revelation, you've acknowledged there's something that you're being revealed to, so therefore there's a limitation to your revelation. You're limited to the concept of revelation. There's already something other, it's not you. You're being revealed there. The whole nature of Oyer is to be revealed out somewhere. There's Oyer implies Zulas, the outsider, to which the Oyer is relating to. So there's already an agenda, there's already a tziyur on some level. True bchira is only atzmos. So it goes on to say, it's to the level of atzmos, where the bchira of Eden. He chooses, he touches like this, he chooses us as his inheritance. Going Yaakov, the excellence of Yaakov that he loves forever. Eibushes bchira. Showing a bchira chavshis betachlis. He adds the word tachlis. It's not just free choice. This is the only free choice. Only atzmos, and therefore yid mushish and atzmos, but them is there. No choice at all, because since Eibush chose, therefore it's got to be our choice. That's another subject. True for us, true choice is no choice at all. It's freedom from choice, not freedom to choose. That's our true bchira chavshis. But the Eibush is freedom to choose, truly, because he transcends all values. Where can there be true bchira where nothing else exists? Period. There's no giluyim. Giluyim means again being affecting others and therefore being affected by otherness. Revealing too. As soon as we talk about revelation, that's quantified. There's already an itiyah. Talking about Shavuos there. Shavuos, Chelik Dalet. Eibush's choice of Yidden. So only Atzmos truly chooses, because only Atzmos is free and transcends utterly all values, giluyim of any kind. Yes, gilui, not gilui. But once there's revelation, it's already a tzir. Revelation implies already an otherness, a tzir, something, otherness, where revelation is taking place. No matter how sublime. And now, this is the Rebbe Rashab who started quoting earlier. No, where do you bring the Rebbe Rashab? Gewalt. Here, the Ein Sof is still beneyabedet. The Ein is out of Baalma. How can you say Ein Sof by Mitius? So there he says, Shagam B'chines Ha'oyer. So that's the Chiddush we're saying now. That since Oyer is Me'ein HaMo'oyer. Let's go slowly here. So for the beat of the Rebbe Rashab, Anal Shagam B'chines Ha'oyer B'chines Ha'ayin Shisham Agas Avedis Odom. Is the Chiddush. Putting everything together. It's a rule in nature that a person can only reach his source. So even this source, which is limited, even there, because of the Bechira of Atzmos, Yeshna Inyan Sheuma Eina Hamoed, the Eibush is invested there, Va'adla Atzmos Amohos. Shemishom Nimshachim Yiv Kalolas Achalasein is Ganyakov. So even the relative ayin that we can reach, which is Gvul, but since the Eibush chose our Avodah, which is limited, but on the trail it's limited. But since he chose that, what's invested there, the ayin ha'amiti, his true presence, the oir me'ein hamoed. So the two ayins merge and become one by his choice. That's the answer. It's because by apiteva, it shouldn't be possible by the nature of nature. But because he chose, so therefore in our limited avodah, we connect limited. Our seichel, our maise, we're doing finite actions. It doesn't get more finite in this world. But in these mitzvahs and avodas adam, which we should only be able to and do on a conscious level, connect to our immediate finite sources that produced us. But since this is his choice, therefore, even in this level of oir, in this level of ayin, is the oir ha'amiti, the oir me'ein hamoed, the ayin ha'amiti, or the yesh ha'amiti expressed in the oir, which is made hamoed in our avodah. So in summary, in simple language, the simplest language possible, how is it that we're able to touch the Eibishter by doing mitzvahs? Answer, because he chose that. That's what should happen. He's invested in that. Because I love you, you'll do these little things for me. For you, it's little. But for me, it's everything. Because I'm invested there in my love for you. And that I have carried, this desire for you, and this love for you, this bechira for you is carried, and the signature is in every expression of me. Highest giluyim and all of ishtalshalos and nivroyim and the sun and the moon, all of it. Kindalach, it's all because of you. Because this ave, the Eibishter wants a dir b'tachtonim, which is asked, everything else follows retroactively. And that's why avodah is greater than creation per se. Because it's avodah that we reveal the yesh amiti. Here's where it's manifested, revealed. We touch the Eibush in the deepest levels of his expression, separable from him himself. So let's summarize. So why Gedolah Ma'aseh Tzadikim and Ma'aseh Shemayim Va'aretz? What we're saying to now is, no, that Ma'aseh Tzadikim, yeah, okay, Muchlich to say lekeret means that take. Why is it that in Maaseh Shamayim v'Aretz the Mo'er is invested there, carrying Atzmos? It's only because of Maaseh Tzadikim, because of our Avodah. And it's our Avodah that reveals there for him in Shamayim v'Aretz. Otherwise, without our Avodah,
because of his choice. Because of his choice.
Right. And without that, the nature of things is that his Atzmos is completely concealed, removed endless levels. First there's Ishtalshalos, and then there's the Rabligvo, and Atzmos is of course the ultimate source behind it, but not invested as an accessible. Accessible, why? Because as Yaakov, Vahafti ves Esav Sanes. Vahafti es Yaakov ves Esav Sanes. That's the Gdoile, that's why it's greater than creation, because the truth of God's, of Atzmos being the source of all creation is just an abstract truth that is removed the levels and levels and levels of, in terms of accessibility, of investure, of presentness. But Maaseh Tzadikim make his being present because, notwithstanding our limited avodah, because of his choice.
Both from the Moor. Both Mein Hamor, but maybe she chose, that's why.
Except the Mein Hamor in creation is completely concealed. And through Maaseh Tzadikim, that Mein Hamor is revealed, even in the limited levels of creation. But it's still, we need to understand further again, because the whole mind is taking pains to say that we see all of this in creation even without avodah. But part of the answer is, I believe, as we were saying before, that's only because he chose Maaseh Tzadikim and our avodah. That's why he's allowing us to see his signature in all of creation, that ein li tchila ve'ein li sof. It's only because of his choice of Yid. Now I'm asking you a simple klotz kasha. We need avodah for it. Just explain the whole time that you see this in Siviris and Ketz, and even Marab Masech Magod Basachat's creation, the outset, Bimbam. We need the avodah for. The answer is, why is that? Because of the choice of our avodah. That's why it's present. And our avodah reveals it. We still have to say we've got to do the avodah. And therefore the avodah justifies, our avodah justifies him investing himself even his creation and reveals it. I'm just suggesting.
That's terrible. You have to do it. Without that, you're getting nowhere.
Without Torah mitzvahs, the whole point, the whole thing, the whole point of it, of creation, is not is moot. Was a total waste. This whole creation project is because of a yid and Torah mitzvahs, and we magal atzmos lamata. We're suggesting here that it's not saying it outright, and therefore that's why all of the levels waiting to be accessed, waiting to be appreciated, revealed.
You're saying that because the conscious you got right now.
Pardon?
You're saying that the Rebbe is hinting at that, but it's only because of the conscious that we just learned. So now the mind we're saying it was no different. The whole world is Mein Amar, and the Mein Amar is in my situation, this is Megala apparently. The reason for all of it.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Was that a Maggid's question?
That's what we're trying to say, yeah. That's what I'm suggesting.
Pardon? Is this not possible to stop right now for a mimer? Is this not the very, very, very same thing?
That's what, yeah. The Hama wanted to access the level of Bligvo, Sheikha Goyra. That's the level of Goyra. Yeah, actually, since you say that, I'll add something, which will I think buttress what we're saying. One of the Maimorim of the Rebbe, and you think it's actually Gimel, he asked the following question. The Chiddush of Purim again is that Haman is wrong because Atzmos chose. right? So, but Purim brings out the girdle levels. That's not really where it's happening. That's where that's the toss. That's what Haman pegged God as infinite. You don't care, can't care, and therefore butt out and let me get away with destroy. The whole world can go up in smoke. It makes no difference to you. Show your real colors. He's looking at you. You don't care. So I'll burn Gehenna. You don't care. Gehenna, the whole thing's irrelevant. So he's wrong because Pchiras Atzmus. So the Shaila is Purim, which means good. Let's back up a bit. The Shaila classically is, why is the Yom Tov called Purim? It's an incidental detail. What's the difference how he arrived at the day to destroy the Jews? Whether it's his wife's birthday or he drew lots. It's complete. It's such an incidental prat. The whole Yom Tov is called Purim. And there is this whole gewaltige beer that this level of Geidel, its connection to Yom Kippur, the Geidel. And that's, he's trying to exploit that. But he's wrong in the end because higher than Geidel, the Lashon HaPosuk is, Vata toimich Geidoli. You, Atzmos, support my girdle. The girdle is fixed. The girdle is fixed. Atzmos, and ABC chooses Mordechai, not Haman. So that then begs the question: so why are we calling the Yom Tov Purim? Should be Atzmos Dike name, not Purim, which is the level of girdle. The end is that the big. This is the point here. We're trying to say here. We're trying to say the mind is saying it. The big chiddush is that once the Atatemach Girdle, you support the girdle is fixed. Once Atzmos has chosen, then that's invested even a level of bligvul. Even though the level of bligvul kachashecha ka'ira by nature would say, it's all equal. Atzmos bypasses that, as it were. It's not the pshat that Atzmos bypasses. Neibishter bypasses his infinite gilui. Never mind what my infinite truth says. You're all equally insignificant. I'm choosing. It's no. Once he chooses, that is, which the Maamre is saying, expressed in all of the Giluyim. So which means, as I understood the Maamre then, that Maamre, that this bligvul property is also in a Yid. That if a bligvul looks at a Yid and says, bligvul, I don't see bligvul in Haman. With the choice of Atzmos, everything the Eibush choose an expression is invested in the Yid. So we don't just have an Atzmisdika property. We have bligvul, where the chashecha ka'ira level, that's now invested in Jew in simple language. Miracles come from bligvul. Invested in the Jew is this miraculous, transcendent property in nature, being in nature. That's the point of here also. That's since Atzmos is boiche, therefore the oir me'en amoir. In all of the levels of creation, because of the Bechir and the Yid, this is all carried. That's the Chiddush why, to think about this further, but that's the answer why Purim is called Purim, because that's the Chiddush. Not that Atzmos overrides the Bligvul. That the choice of Atzmos now, it's fixed, Kavayochel. Which what that means is that all of the milas of Ishtalshalis and higher than Ishtalshalis is invested in the Yid, come along with God's choice. So he's part of nature and he's beyond nature, everything. It's all in, all of it. Okay, we continue tomorrow. Let's Be'ezer Hashem, and let's continue with our story.